Andy.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Our mayor is participating with us via teleconference. He is, hello? He is practicing social distancing and staying home while feeling a few symptoms, so we're happy that he's home and taking care of himself, but participating with us. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Kristen Cook, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We hear you, Mayor. Thanks for participating. Yvonne, I'll turn it over to you for roll call.
Councilmember Duran.
Here.
Councilmember Heilman.
Here.
Councilmember Meister.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath.
Here.
Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We did not have a closed session agenda, so we don't need a report on that, correct? Okay. So now moving to approval of tonight's agenda. First, I'll start with consent items. Is everyone okay with leaving everything that currently is on consent on consent?
There's a request that item 2I, which is the West Hollywood Archive project, be tabled to a later date.
Okay, so we'll table item 2I. Item 3A has already been requested to be tabled by staff, so we will table that item. I believe item 4A, which is our public safety update, will be discussed as part of our urgency items, if everyone is okay with that. Item 4B, Paul, you had a recommendation from staff.
Yes, this is an item for the council to discuss the subcommittee regarding a Metro liaison appointment. Staff requests that Mayor Pro Tem Horvath be appointed to that spot.
If everyone's, and then you would,
To consent.
is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You'll be mayor in the upcoming months and you'll be the city's representative, so that would be good.
Okay. Item 4C, I believe we would like to table.
Yes, this is the right to counsel program, and at this point, we would like to table that.
Okay, item 5A.
I was going to try to move it to consent. You don't have the staff here. Is that the reason why?
We want to move it to consent. I mean, we want to move it to another meeting. There's still more items in here we need to flesh out a little bit more.
Okay.
So we're going to table that item 4C. Moving on to item 5A, which is the Urban Design and Architecture Studio. Are we able to move that to consent?
Yes.
I actually have questions on that, so if you want to hold that over, I'm comfortable with that, but I could address my concerns tonight as well, but
Oh,
it's up to
If-
you.
If it doesn't change the work program, or if it's a minor tweak and you do want to just raise it during council member comment, we could do that and adjust it. If it's something material and you want to have an in-depth conversation, I recommend we table it to another meeting.
Why don't we table it then?
Sure thing.
Okay, item 5B, which is our housing element, can we move that to consent?
Yes.
Council?
Yes.
Item 5C, which is inclusionary housing requirements, are we comfortable moving that to consent?
I am.
Yes. Okay, item 5D, which is the pop-up businesses, are we comfortable moving that to consent?
I am.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. And then item 6A, which is an ordinance of the City of West Hollywood amending provisions of Chapter 3.08 of Title III relating to approval of contracts.
I'm
Can we
okay
move-
with.
We
I'm
can move
okay
that
with
to
that.
consent, and I know the city clerk will want to read that into the record officially. All right, so with those changes,
And we would be adding 3 items, new items to the agenda. And for continuity on the agenda, the items would be 5E, 5F, and 5G. 5E would be a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Hollywood proclaiming the existence of a local emergency. 5F would be emergency supportive services in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And 5G would be a temporary moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent during the COVID-19 pandemic.
okay.
And then in order to add those, you'll have to find that the reason for adding them came to your attention after the agenda was posted and requires immediate action. And since they're all related to the emergency declaration, I would presume that the council will be able to make those findings.
I would move that we add all 3 items to the agenda as urgency items.
Second.
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, are there any objections? Then by unanimous acclamation, we will add those items to the agenda as well.
Lindsay, I had 2 consent calendar items I have comments on, and I could make them right now, if that's okay, and leave them on consent.
We can leave them on consent, but I believe we're still going to have a moment for council member comments after we have public comments, so why don't we do it then?
Okay.
So with all of those changes, are the city clerk, you're comfortable with all of the changes we've given direction on for the agenda, so we're clear about that?
Yes.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
You want to go ahead and push your buttons? There we go.
If we could have your voice vote, Mayor D'Amico, on the approval of the agenda as amended?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so our agenda has been amended and approved unanimously. Now moving on to adjournment motions. Do we have any adjournment motions, Mayor?
No, none, thank you.
Councilmember Duran?
No.
Councilmember Meister?
I have one adjournment motion tonight. Hank Bernard. Hank was one of the unsung heroes of the creation of West Hollywood. He was somebody who coordinated our signature gathering campaign to get cityhood on the ballot back in 1984. He helped gather signatures at what was then called Alpha Beta Supermarket, for those of you who are old timers. And he collected a lot of signatures in the last couple of weeks to make sure that we had enough signatures to get cityhood on the ballot in November 1984. He was also somebody very active in Santa Monica's rent control advocacy efforts. He really was somebody who was loved and appreciated by everyone who met him. Whether he was young, whether people were young or old, they all gravitated to Hank. He was very interested in soccer, politics, music, work, and all topics. He was a great guy, and he will be missed. I would request we adjourn in his memory.
Without objection. And as is our tradition in the city of West Hollywood, to adjourn our council meetings in honor of military service personnel who were killed in service to our country since our last meeting. They are Staff Sergeant Marshall D. Roberts, age 28, Specialist Juan Miguel Mendez Covarrubias, age 27, Lance Corporal Brody Gillen, age 26, Gunnery Sergeant Diego Di Pongo, age 34, and Captain Moises A. Navas, age 34. Moving on we do not have any presentations tonight. Madam City Clerk, how are we handling public comment tonight?
The people who are here and have signed up for public comment, your name will be on the screen and you can come up for your 2 minutes. For those who submitted public comment online, our Assistant City Clerk will be reading them into the record according to the public comment or agenda item they are related to.
Okay, so we'll start with,
Also, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. One of the things that I had discussed previously with the mayor, and of course it's up to the council now, was since the urgency items that are on the agenda and the public safety report, in particularly the having the presence of the LA County Department of Public Health here tonight, is that in lieu of doing a presentation, that we would actually take up the 3 urgency items at the beginning of the meeting and go through that. So if people do want to leave, and I'm really glad that the community is doing a great job on the social spacing and that folks are in here because they can be watching this at home. But we thought it would be important to just have that as part of the initial message and to get those items done right at the beginning of the meeting.
okay, so we will hold public comment, general public comment, as well as council member comments until after we hold the discussion on the 3 urgency items. Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay.
And then we'll do it probably before consent calendar so that if you received written comments on the consent calendar items, we can hear them then.
Correct.
Sound good? Okay.
Okay, so with that direction then, we will move on to item 5E, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Hollywood proclaiming the existence of a local emergency. And I believe we can have discussion on all 3 items simultaneously, is that correct?
Yeah, I
Madam
think
City Attorney?
if you'd like, I could just introduce the 3 briefly. There's definitely overlap amongst the 3. So why don't I just lay out what the 3 are, and then we can talk about them, and you could take action on them all together or in 3 individual actions.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
there's 3 urgency items that were added to the agenda tonight. The first would be a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Hollywood proclaiming the existence of a local emergency. And as you know, things are changing hourly. We're learning new information hourly. And so when drafting this proposed resolution, we tried to capture the issues that seem to be of most importance at the moment. Since then, we've learned more rules have come out from the county health department. So I'm just going to walk you through what the proposed resolution says. And if we determine that some of these things have been addressed by the county this afternoon, we may not need to include them all. So in the draft resolution declaring an emergency, it declares a local emergency, and then pursuant to the authority prescribed in the municipal code under our emergency ordinance, it includes a provision that all restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in the city are ordered to close on-site patronage until March 31st, 2020, and that takeout orders and delivery of meals is permitted, provided that takeout is picked up by a single person and social distance is maintained. As an alternative, you could adopt a provision, and this was all posted on the city's website today with the agenda if anyone wants to read it or anyone at home is listening. As an alternative, restaurants and alcohol beverage establishments in the city would be ordered to reduce occupancies and rearrange furniture as necessary to implement social distancing. All formal and informal organizing group activities, games, and sports are hereby prohibited in city parks. You could adopt an alternative that allows the dog parks to remain open. However, patrons shall abide social distancing. There's a proposed provision that requires high visibility signs to be posted at all city parks, advising that COVID-19 is known to survive on surfaces for 72 hours or more, and that specified social distancing measures should be observed. And then we included a provision, because everything is happening so fast, that if the federal government, state government, or county adopts orders that cover some of these same topics, that the city manager would have authority to suspend those local provisions so that we don't have inconsistencies. Let's see. So that is the first item, which would be declaring the local emergency and authorizing the mobilization of local resources and ability to coordinate interagency response and initiate that.
Mayor Pro Tem, as we go through these three, if I have questions on individual ones, do we stop in between, or are we going to go to a presentation on all three?
I'm going to allow the city attorney to walk us through all 3 items, and then we'll go back through questions.
I
Okay.
think that's a good idea because Paul may have some input on some of these as well, as they've been a work in progress.
And also on 5F, this was instituted by the mayor and Councilmember Hammond, so I don't know if you want us to do the initial presentation or if you would like to do that.
I don't mind explaining. Some of this duplicates other items because we were working over the weekend and
Right.
weren't aware that these items were coming forward, but the mayor and I brought forth an item, and I think this is consistent with what a number of council members have been thinking, giving the city manager authority to increase our emergency rental assistance for people who may be affected by loss of income, loss of jobs during this time, imposing a moratorium on evictions, which is the subject of the next item, authorizing the city manager, social services, and sheriff to take all appropriate actions for people who are unsheltered to prevent the spread of the disease, authorizing a shutdown or limit on occupancies of nightclubs, restaurants, et cetera. But I think that is moot now based on the LA County Public Health Department's order. Establishing an emergency fund and inviting others to contribute to it to help our local residents who are impacted by the loss of income and revenue. Authorizing the city manager to reduce or suspend certain taxes for businesses in exchange for agreements to not lay off employees. Creating opportunities for volunteers in the community who want to help others, home-delivered meals, volunteering at healthcare facilities and the like, coordinating with Cedars, which I know we've been doing, authorizing the use of public or private property without the need to go to the Planning Commission for temporary medical uses, including testing, authorizing the city manager to work with local grocery stores to address the problems that we're seeing there with people buying in panic and the parking and traffic related issues there. And then obviously this is moot as well since we have shut City Hall to public access, but allowing a technology allowance to the city manager to enable our employees to work remotely. And we recently, today, received some input from Unite Here, which has some other good suggestions, and I would direct that the city manager look at those, including training for workers in the community on how to prevent the spread of the virus, and appropriate actions that our hoteliers could take.
Okay.
Great. So those actions will all work in hand with the declaration of emergency, which initiates our emergency services and provides additional direction to the city manager to take these actions that are necessary. And as Councilmember Heilman mentioned, just late this afternoon, the County Department of Public Health issued a control order because they have public health authority over the entire county, requiring that all permanent food facilities limit their services to only preparing and offering food to customers via delivery service, pickup for takeout dining, or drive-through, immediately requiring the closing of all bars and nightclubs that do not serve food, closing gyms and fitness centers, and closing movie theaters, live performance theaters, bowling alleys, and arcades. Ordering that all public and group events and mass gatherings of 50 people or more are prohibited, and requiring social distancing for all events between 10 and 49 members of the public. And then this order is not superseded by any stricter limitation imposed by a local public entity. So you see how these orders are all coming out really quickly, and this would apply to businesses in the city. In fact, I've already received notices of businesses closing their doors because of this public health order. So if you take action on this resolution, I think that we could leave out sections 5A, which has to do with restaurants, bars, and nightclubs.
I do have questions about that
Okay,
particular section.
we can talk
though.
about that.
Okay.
I'll just mention the third piece. There has been a call to protect renters in the city who are going to be losing their wages during this crisis and who aren't going to be able to work, and businesses are closing and schools are closing and people have to stay home in order to take care of their children. And so what we've put forth here as the third urgency item is a temporary moratorium on evictions for for non-payment of rent during this pandemic. And I'll walk you through the terms of the proposal here. It provides that no landlord shall endeavor to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent if the tenant demonstrates that the tenant is unable to pay rent due to financial impacts related to COVID-19. The tenant must notify the landlord in writing of lost income and inability to pay the full rent. And the reasons someone is considered financially impacted by COVID-19 include being sick with COVID-19 or caring for a household or family member who is sick, layoff, loss of hours, or other income reduction resulting from business closure or other employer impacts, compliance with recommendation from government health authority to stay home, self-quarantine, and avoid congregating with others during the state of emergency. And we learned today that a few counties up in Northern California are requiring people to shelter in place for at least 3 weeks. So these things are coming out very fast. Extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses and child care needs arising from school closures related to COVID-19. So nothing in the ordinance will relieve the tenant of the liability for the unpaid rent, which the landlord can seek after the local emergency ends, and then the tenant must pay within 6 months of expiration of a local emergency. This temporary ordinance will be in place for 60 days unless extended by the Director of Emergency Services. And then we also put in language that if the federal government, state government impose similar restrictions at the state or federal level, that the city manager has the authority to suspend our local regulations so that we don't have inconsistencies during this time. So those are the 3 items we've put before you. Again, I realize this is a lot of information. We went ahead and posted it all on the city's website under the agenda for tonight, so anybody can read it and see all of the details that have been proposed for you. Everything is moving quickly. Staff has been working all weekend and all day today to get these documents ready for you to be able to take action tonight. Paul, do you have anything you wanted to add on these?
No.
So I want to start by saying thank you to especially both of you for working all of the hours that you've worked, especially over this weekend and in preparation of this meeting, but for everyone who's been working. I know our public safety officials are here as well, and our communications team, everyone at City Hall who's been working hard to make sure people are informed, that people are safe, and that people are supported during this difficult time. It's an uncertain time, but we're doing our best to make sure that we can provide for the residents in our West Hollywood community as best we can. So thank you for all the work that you've been doing. In order to facilitate this discussion, I'm going to go back to the first item, which is item 5E, the resolution of the City Council of the City of West Hollywood proclaiming the existence of a local emergency. Mayor, I'm going to take your comment first.
I had a question about the timing. I think what I heard was that this had to sunset on March 31st, and we don't have a meeting until further into April, and I wondered if the city attorney or city manager could talk about that.
So the question, to repeat the question, it's about whether we should extend the period from March 31st until our next meeting, because we don't have a meeting before March 31st. Will we want to extend the period until our next council meeting?
It's actually a requirement of law that it has to be reviewed in 60 days for the proclamation of emergency.
Okay, then perhaps I just.
Isn't it for 60 days?
misunderstood, Because I thought what I heard was that this was only through the end of March. But if
Which
that's not
part?
the case, then
5A, Section 5A, for the,
Oh, the part on the restaurants. Okay, but I think that we may not need to adopt that part because the county health department ordered all restaurants today to be closed. So we will probably delete that from the resolution.
Okay, so let's be clear about that then. So we're going to delete section 5A and 5AI from the item, as well as the alternative. Is that your recommendation?
That is the recommendation. I believe Councilmember Duran may have some questions. But yes, that is the only part of the proposed resolution that has the March 31st.
Okay.
And then 5B would have to be relettered 5A.
Yes.
So, looking at page 2 of the resolution, section 5A and 5AI, as well as the alternative, are being eliminated, and all subsequent items would be relettered in succession. Are there any, Mayor, does that cover all of your questions on this item?
yes, for now, thanks.
Okay. Other questions? Councilmember Duran?
Thank you. I have a few questions on this item. Are we meeting again are we meeting on April 6th or only once in April?
As of now, we're slated to postpone the next meeting until the 20th. They're doing work in the council chambers early April, so that meeting's being canceled.
I think that given where we are at this moment in time under emergency circumstances, we need to meet April 6th. Even if it's just for purposes of finding out where we are, we have businesses in peril, residents being laid off, a lot of people requiring emergency services. We don't know where we're going to be exponentially in terms of new cases in the county in 2 weeks. And I'm just not comfortable us not meeting every 2 weeks until the crisis is over.
And with the current leniency on the Brown Act, we could do a remote meeting, so we could coordinate something. So even if the council chamber's not available, we can still do.
We can, I
Have to
don't,
have one location available for the public to come, but the members can participate by teleconference.
So we'll be able to coordinate that.
I just think we need to meet. We can't be declaring an emergency and then not meeting for a month. That's inconsistent. The other thing I noticed in this item is that we are suspending a lot of our parking regulations, which I understand the reasons why. We have a lot of people who are now isolating or quarantined at home. So we need to have as many available parking spots as we can, and so we're waiving our permit parking. The one area that caught my eye was the not enforcing our street sweeping during this interim period. If it's a matter of 2 weeks, we can get by without sweeping our streets. But if this goes into 2 months or longer, not sweeping our streets is going to create some problems. So how do we address that? I cannot imagine not sweeping our streets for a period of 2 to 3 months without producing other consequences.
This is something that we could address. Now we have something to talk to about at the April 6th meeting. This is really being designed that if people are being required to stay home and to work from home, to have all the residents' vehicles on the street at one time, they're not going to be able to move the cars if we have to do street sweeping. So I think this is something that we could bring back and assess at the next meeting.
Is it possible to look at then employing physical workers to sweep the streets the old-fashioned way with pan and broom as an alternative? We already make use of those people working on the Sunset Strip and other places?
That's a great idea. That's not our number one priority right now. We're having other types of security issues and
I
challenges.
understand.
So
At some point, it will become a problem.
and we'll definitely have some more to discuss on that at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. The other questions I have to do with the issues under Section 5 that you were all referencing. Currently, it sounds like the city of Los Angeles and other communities are closing bars, restaurants, nightclubs until the end of the month. which I understand, that's at least what everyone's intending. If that period of time ends up becoming an optional period for cities to decide how to reopen businesses, is that authority now within the hands of the city manager under this emergency resolution? If it's discretionary as opposed to mandated by the county or the state?
The answer is yes. There's some definition in the ordinance that talks about ideas about the social space and other issues, but that would be within our purview.
All right. At some point, we need to start reopening our business community, and there may be an issue in terms of what's priority between restaurants, bars, and nightclubs. I think restaurants would probably be above bars and nightclubs. But I trust you, Paul, to exercise your discretion. I just wanted to know that you had the authority as part of this resolution. The city dog parks, as my opinion is that we completely close the parks because as much as I love having the dogs play in the parks, it's not consistent with the social distancing I think that we're trying to achieve. I mean, happy to hear alternate arguments on that. Our staff, our city recreational staff, are they going to still be in the park for security purposes only? Limited staffing?
We're at this point, we're not cutting any staffing. We are closing the buildings. The park facilities at this time would be open in terms of outdoor space. And we're working with the recreation manager right now to really look at the deployment of those individuals. But as of now, they're going to continue to work. We're just looking at some reassignments.
All right. My last question is, if there are issues unforeseen that none of us are even contemplating at this moment, by adopting an emergency resolution, are we ceding authority to you to act in the event that we cannot constitute ourselves within the limits of the Brown Act within 72 hours notice? Are we giving you full authority to make decisions?
The short answer is yes. If something does fall outside of the current resolutions, I could initiate another resolution specific to an issue that may be something different than we've identified here. So ultimately, there is power to make another declaration if needed. So the short answer is yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. I mean, I know you well enough to know you would check with all 5 of us anyway, but I just wanted to hear that you're going to have the authority to make decisions. Thank you.
Before I go to our next set of questions, street sweeping is not explicitly included in this item 5E.
Yeah, I confused myself. It's actually in the city's press release.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure.
And
Well,
for
we
clarity
can
on
save
that too, is we're going to continue to sweep the streets. We're just not going to write tickets if somebody doesn't move their car.
Okay, so, okay, I'm keeping track of our comments and questions. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Meister.
I have some suggestions or questions that may not necessarily be in this, but has to do with the process. So, first of all, did the county closing gyms as well? Any
Yes.
gyms and massage parlors? Hopefully, they're closing that as well. Or if they're not, then we should be. And then, are we going to suspend the sunset trip and the pickup while bars and clubs are closed?
Yes, all of our what we would call discretionary or commercial type transportation will be suspended during this time. However, the Dollaride and the other services, the WeHoX and other types of shuttles will continue in service because we consider those essential for people to get to work and get around town.
What about WeHoX?
WeHoX as well. We'll continue.
And can we appoint someone from staff, or if maybe someone at our community center, Jewish Vocational Services, to assist employees of closed businesses with navigating unemployment insurance and other benefits?
Can we hold that question to the next item?
I will hold. Then I'll hold off on all my other questions.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that's
for
fine.
now, the declaration of local emergency, if that's okay. All right, Councilmember Heilman?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Paul, and to Lauren and all of our staff for bringing this forward and working so diligently over the weekend with constantly changing information. I have just one comment on the declaration of emergency, and that's with respect to the parks. My understanding is that the parks will remain open, like the sidewalks will remain open. People are free to walk on our sidewalks and walk through the park, but we expect them to maintain appropriate social distancing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It seems to me that the dog park should be no different than the rest of the park, as long as we can enforce. If we're allowing people to be in the parks generally, as long as they're not in organized groups, I'm okay with the dog parks remaining open. The one question that I'm sure we're going to get with the county health department's order to close the gyms, a lot of our residential buildings have small gyms that serve that apartment or serve that condominium. Does the county's order include those kind of facilities as well as commercial gyms? So it doesn't affect our adoption of this ordinance, but I think it is something that people in the community are going to want to know about.
It doesn't, but I've read in some other social distancing guidelines that if there's common areas in multifamily buildings, that people should exercise the social distancing in there as well and not be using them at the same time.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing in my building,
Right.
and encouraging people to not be within 10 feet of others, yeah. Other than that, I'm fully supportive, and again, thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay, and I would just add, with regard to the governor's admonition to have all of our residents 65 and older required to stay indoors, is that something we're including as part of our local emergency advice?
Yeah, I don't think it was a requirement. I think it was a suggestion that they do that. So all of our materials we're pushing out to folks. And we're also doing that also with our employee workforce, those people over a certain age. And I'm just right behind them, encouraging them to work at home.
Right, okay, I just want to make sure that we're being consistent in our messaging with state and county advice. So this item, with the addition of including, are we in agreement about including an April, a second meeting in April?
I'm okay with that, but I don't think it has anything to do with this particular item.
Well,
This item would remain in effect for at
60
least
days.
60 days until we renew it.
okay. The comments about reopening businesses, what days we reopen businesses, we are in agreement about keeping the parks closed as opposed to the alternative recommendation. And then,
Well,
The county's
We're
required.
actually not closing the parks.
We're closing all of our buildings. We're only, the only buildings that we're leaving open are the ones that have recovery programs, and we're asking that they reduce their occupancy. But all buildings, all city buildings will be closed to public. The park, as of now, we're treating as open space. And we're going to be putting notices out to park users to be aware of their social distancing. But at this time, we are not recommending closing the parks. Part of the reason is that it's hard to close the parks because they're open. But if we do see that problems persist, or if that there are issues in any parts of the park, including the dog parks, then we would move to do something to close that. And I would notify all of you when I do that.
okay. And then the last question I have is one that came from the community about what, if any, action are we preparing to do to consider a reduction of inflows into the city of non-residents at some point, if we have, if necessary, if we have a breakout like what happened in New Rochelle?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you? I was reading a text message.
It's
Would
okay.
you please repeat that?
I'll say it again. There are lots of questions, so we'll try to go slow. this question has to do with reducing inflow into the city of non-residents coming into the city if we determine that there's an outbreak here or vice versa.
I think what's going to slow or deter the influx of people into the city is just the businesses closing. Right now, we're looking at restaurants and clubs and more social gathering spots. At some point, the emergency proclamations may also go towards office space and other types of gatherings. And at that point, we would work with the state and county leaders to shut those businesses down as well.
Okay, so with all of those comments, Madam
Actually, one of your questions, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Just a couple more questions. So this is silent on commercial businesses that sell retail products. Is that correct? Grocery stores, shoe stores.
The current action right now is primarily restaurants, bars, clubs, and gyms. They have not addressed closing other types of retail stores yet.
To take that up right now.
If you can speak a little bit slower and a little bit closer to the microphone on your phone, we can't really understand you.
I'm sorry. And we're not planning to take that up right now regarding commercial businesses that sell retail products.
Not yet. No, we are not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Madam City Clerk, you had a question? No?
What I'd like to add, though, is just as kind of a backdrop for people to know is that while we're bringing this item before the council tonight, we have 3 items before the council tonight. We've been working on this for quite a long time, and we really ramped up 3 to 4 weeks ago in terms of our efforts to be prepared for the crisis that we find ourselves in today. We've established both internal meetings with management team. We have coordinated effort not only with all of the West Side cities, but with also the Area A, which we belong from an emergency management perspective. We have standing calls with business leaders in the community. We also have subcommittees. One is to look at tools and resources to assist small businesses. And then we also have another standing committee that's working on tools and resources to help assist the West Hollywood workforce. So we have a lot of things in motion right now that are designed to be supportive to the community. It's really a challenge. It's at this point because it's so widespread, but folks are rolling up their sleeves and we're working on creative ideas, and we're doing everything we can to reach out to the business community, to our social service agencies, and to our residents. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts happening right now, and we appreciate your support tonight as we're talking about these particular items, but there's a lot of background information as well.
And to be clear, the closures will start as of today and continue until when?
Until we get notice from the health department or the state to lift those. Right now, we're working off of the mandate of the LA County Department of Health, which I want to say, as a lot of agencies in the United States have kind of been spinning a little bit. The Department of Public Health has really been a steadfast leader for us, and the definitive determination they made today was really helpful for all 88 cities in LA County. So at this point, we're working off of their lead. We've been really relying on the experts. We believe in science, so we've been working with the people who are trained to deal with these issues. At this point, we're going to defer to them in terms of when those businesses can reopen, but as of now, we're following their lead.
Okay, thank you. I know Councilmember Duran, then Heilman, then Meister. I think
It looks like there's a list going now. Heilman, Duran, and Meister. I think.
You
Oh,
got
me
the mic.
Me next?
Go ahead.
I'm bumping ahead of you, John. All right, I got a few questions. The county has jurisdiction over health permits. That's the reason they can't regulate retail. They don't issue any permits with retail, correct?
That is correct. The businesses that they are directing us to close are the ones that they directly permit.
All right, so there has to be a nexus between the county and a particular business or entity in order for them to exercise any jurisdiction. So a lot of then non-county permitted businesses fall under our purview.
That is correct, but they are still working as an an advisory capacity, and the health department is here, and I'm sure at some point when they address the council, these are certain areas where if we are seeing hot spots in the community, that they would raise flags that these areas, whether it's in the city of West Hollywood or anywhere in LA County, that they would give an advisory notice to us.
All right, and then one of my colleagues asked a question which led me to have another set of questions about the 12-step meetings in the city. 12-step meetings occur at a lot of our public facilities, not only the Recovery Center, but Plummer Park, Fiesta Hall, Great Hall, Long Hall. And I actually thought we were closing them completely. Now it sounds like we're going to allow the 12-step meetings to occur with proper social distancing. Is that what I heard?
That is what we're offering them. And the challenge with some of the decisions that we're making is that you have two critical issues. One, obviously, is the pandemic we're dealing with, and also the critical service that's being provided. Working with the organizers, making sure that the people who are going into the building are educated, very much like tonight. We have a public meeting tonight. My suggestion was, if you don't need to be here, go home. But that's not that easy for people who are in recovery. So I think that those programs are important. We did hear from one of the recovery facilities is going to be doing online and like a Skyping type program for some of their members. So people are being innovative. People are being supportive. We have to be creative. And we're trying to be as supportive and flexible as we can, recognizing that there are major public health issues right
Okay, I'm going to get into the weeds just a bit, just because there's a little nuance here, but I think it's worth getting into the weeds for just a moment. So tonight on the agenda, on the consent calendar, it appears we're going to purchase the log cabin, and we are going to enter into a sublease with the West Hollywood Recovery Center Board of Directors to run both the Recovery Center and the log cabin. So I think that those two facilities, we have somebody that we can interface with respect to setting policy and regulations. The same can't be said for the meetings that occur at Plummer Park, because all of the meetings that occur at Plummer Park are individual meetings with nobody per se in charge. The 12 traditions of the 12-step meetings specifically recognize there's just a secretary that happens to run that meeting that day. So I think we may want to, as we get into the weeds, think about is it possible to possibly reduce the rent of the Recovery Center in exchange for them possibly taking over management of the 12-step meetings at Plummer Park during this period, because somebody has to coordinate who are the secretaries of the 10 or 12 meetings that happen every week. They're constantly changing, unless we want to take that internally, and I don't think we do.
Well, everything you're saying is correct, but the park staff does have relationships with people who are attending those meetings, and we have been in contact with them about reducing occupancy and creating the safe social spacing. So those conversations are already happening. If we find out, similar to other activities in the park or in the city, that it is problematic and it's a health issue, then we will take further steps. But as of now, they have been cooperative, and according to staff who's actually out in the field, they feel as though that the occupancy is being reduced enough to have a safe environment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Heilman.
Yes, this will just be brief, and it just reiterates what you said earlier, Paul. We should be taking action based on the advice of public health authorities, the LA County Public Health Authority and the state of California. And our decisions and your decisions should be based on what medical expertise is telling us in terms of closing businesses, allowing businesses to reopen. All of that is and has been based on that kind of information. And I appreciate the fact that you're committing that that's what we're going to do in the future. None of us up here are public health authorities. None of us are doctors. I think we need to follow the experts and encourage our residents to do the same. And thank you for articulating that tonight and making that the basis of your decisions.
Councilmember Meister.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that with this item, if you do need to close, for example, salons or whatever, that you actually can do that you have the authority with this item to do that if it's before one of our meetings.
Yeah, I believe that I do have that authority, but also when our friend from the health department comes up, they'll provide clarification on that.
Well, on that note, should we, I want to be really clear, the closures that were implemented by the county today, that's already in effect? Yes, okay, so the closures that were implemented by the county are already in effect. Any additional closures or modifications as outlined in this item go into effect after passage by the council and remain in effect until further notice from the Public Health Department. Okay, and the county is not advising against AA meetings continuing to allow groups of people to come together for purposes of the AA meetings?
I think really what the issue is, it's the crowd size, the room size, and also the social spacing. Those are best practices for any gathering, and those are what we are working with the recovery meetings to adhere to.
Great. We certainly don't want anyone to break their sobriety, but we also want to make sure that everybody's staying healthy across the board. Are we ready to take a vote? Do we have any further comment?
If there's any public comment, and do
There-
you want to vote on each three individually, or
Well, I think we can take action on this now that we've closed discussion unless do we have any individual public comment on this item, which is 5E regarding this existence of a local emergency?
We're looking through the public comments because these items were added at the last minute. None of the items were specifically called out to this. We have some public comment, but they'll have to be read with the general public comment.
Okay, so why don't we take one action then? I'll leave this item open. We've had discussion on it. If we need to come back to it for some reason, we can, but we'll read public comments at that time after you're able to review them.
We're going to read all of the public comment at the same time because those that submitted public comment, it was just general public comment when they submitted it.
So why don't we do that now between this item and the next, so that way we know what the public comment is and we hear from.
My suggestion is to get through the three items. We because we were so open to people submitting comments online that we would read in. We probably have an hour and a half worth of comments to read in. So I would do that at the end of the meeting. I would, and I may be exaggerating, but it's a thick stack of comments.
And I guess the issue is that they're not separated out because when the individual submitted public comment, these items weren't on the agenda.
I'm clear about that, and I just want to make sure we're legally getting to all of the comments that pertain to these items as they're agendized, not necessarily other public comment that isn't related to this. So are you saying you're going to separate those out that pertain to these three items?
We can do that, yes.
perhaps Melissa and Yvonne could do that while we talk about the next two items, and then we could take 3 votes at the end, and that might give her enough time to just glance through and make sure
Yes.
there's no public comment on
Okay,
it.
great.
I have
Thank you.
one final question. It's a quick one. With respect to enforcement police power, since the county is the agency that declared that bars, restaurants, gyms, nightclubs be shut down, does the county then have the citing authority to enforce their own health permit restriction, or do we have dual jurisdiction? Is the city code enforcement also responsible for citing?
Our code compliance would also be in charge of enforcing this.
So it'll be us enforcing the county's law?
Well, basically what's happening now is we have businesses that do not have a permit to operate. So we would be enforcing that.
Understand. Thank you.
Okay, So, given that we're gonna take some time to go through public comment, we'll do that at the end. We're now moving on to item 5F, which is emergency supportive services in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. There are a host of recommendations. I believe some of them we said we might want to remove, such as item 11, now that we have limited access to City Hall. Were there other items we wanted to eliminate?
Well, 11, I would not eliminate in its entirety. It allows an allowance of $150,000 for city employees for technology to work remotely. So I think that's, we need to authorize that for the city manager.
Okay.
The item 2 in the recommendations, the moratorium on evictions, that will be handled by our third item tonight, so we could remove that. Item number 4, the part about limiting occupancy at nightclubs, bars, restaurants, and other public establishments, and considering occupancy limits at city facilities, I think that's all mooted based on what other authorities have done and the previous item that we addressed. And the only other addition I would have to this is the addition I made earlier, directing the city manager to look at the suggestions from the hotel workers, but also to make sure that all of our public information is in multiple languages. I'm hearing concerns from the Russian-speaking community that they're not really getting all of the information, so if we can make sure we're doing that.
Okay, so.
And then 11 would be modified to eliminate portions of it, but to still include the monetary portion of it.
Yeah, item 11, even though we're moving aggressively forward, I don't have the stat. I gave her my stat.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the technology allowance?
Yes.
Yeah, that is something that we do need in IT. I was working with Eugene Sippis over the weekend. So that even though we're starting to move remote tools out, we're going to be purchasing them, and we have them on order, so that those are items that we will need.
Okay, so it looks like Councilmember Duran has some.
I'm sorry, I've got a handful of questions on this one. One, I just got a text from David Vandervelde, who's the president of the West Hollywood Recovery Center, that they have already elected to close the recovery center and not open the log cabin until they're given further direction from the city or the county that it's safe to do so. So just wanted to report that back, that they've decided that the 12-step meetings are going to occur online through Zoom until they get notification from the city that it's safe to reopen. So he's just told me they've already posted that on their website. They've already taken a vote. They're closed for now. So if we want to reopen them, we can talk to them about reopening. The second thing I wanted to mention is I wonder if there's anybody, Paul, you've thought about on staff to serve as an ombudsperson. There are so many different questions coming on so many different issues, ranging from employment to unemployment to health issues. And I think what's happening now is the 5 of us are fielding those questions, and we don't always have the answers because we are not at City Hall. And now we've got very limited City Hall staff there. So is there somebody, or if not tonight, do you think it's wise to have an ombudsperson that can just direct people where to go and who to talk to?
And we are putting that in place. We're going to have a hotline for calls and also emails, and then that will be routed. We'll create a hub that can then respond to those issues. So that's something that we will be pushing out with our information.
You just need a traffic cop. The next question I have has to do with the Sheriff's Department using their authority under 5150 of the Civil Code with homeless populations. I understand that we have a great desire to make sure that the homeless are not sheltering themselves. That we're under a quarantine, and everybody should be quarantined and housed during this period of time. Are we asking the sheriffs and our nightly patrols to use greater authority under 5150 to make sure that people are sheltered for the next 2 weeks rather than possibly being vectors of contagion?
That's a question for the guy over there in the uniform.
And I can,
Right,
if they want to think about it, I have 3 other questions, but.
okay.
Well,
So,
the item actually is authorizing the sheriff's social services to take all appropriate legal actions within their power to address the issue of unsheltered individuals, to protect them and to protect the rest of the community. So there is an issue as to what authority they have. And that's an issue that hopefully the legislature will address during this crisis as well.
Well, I guess I want to say I would advocate for an expansion of that authority. If we're under 2 weeks of asking everybody to shelter and isolate and be under quarantine, that should be everybody, including our homeless population. So I think it's actually, I'm advocating for an expansion of that authority rather than a restriction.
I think we would have to ask our city attorney to look at what the declaration of emergency allows in terms of an expansion of that authority. And we also need to make sure that we have appropriate facilities, because we don't want to bring people into a location where they will have close contact with others if we haven't tested them or if they haven't been tested. So it's a very, I think, difficult and delicate situation, but the intent of this was to give authority to our city manager, our sheriff, and our human services staff to give them the broadest possible authority that the law allows at this time.
All right, thank you. The next question I have has to do with hotels. Hotels often have kitchens and are involved in the preparation of food and delivery of food to people who are staying there. I assume they also have a health permit from the County of Los Angeles. Are their permits intact, or are hotels exempted for anything that we're trying to do if they want to prepare meals and deliver them?
and remember that restaurants are still allowed to do takeout. So,
Yeah, but it's not really takeout if it's internal to the
but it
hotel.
would be the same thing in the hotel. So the hotel restaurant would not be open, but people could still get room service. And on that note, what I'd really like to do is thanking the health department for being out here. They're kind of on a road show right now. And if Kristen can introduce Kristen from the health department, maybe she could help address some of the questions specific to the order.
Thank you.
Introducing another Kristen who might look familiar to all of you. Kristen Mundy was here to help care for our community during the meningitis crisis that we went through as well. And she is our regional health officer here to speak this evening. Thank you, Kristen.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here today and share some updates and information about coronavirus. I know that it's very important. It's of interest to the community, so I just have a few updates that I'd like to give to all of you. So we know that COVID-19, or the novel coronavirus, has many people in our communities concerned about their risk to their health. Today, I just want to provide some numbers. Just this afternoon, we confirmed an additional 25 new cases of COVID-19. So that brings us to a total of 94 cases in Los Angeles County. That includes 5 cases reported in the city of Long Beach and 2 by the city of Pasadena. We think that, we believe that 15 of these cases are likely due to community transmission. Those at greater risk for developing serious complications if diagnosed with COVID-19 should avoid any non-essential travel, public gatherings, or places where groups of people congregate. The following groups are considered at highest risk of serious illness if diagnosed with COVID-19: adults 65 years and older, people with certain health conditions such as heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, kidney disease, and weakened immune systems, and pregnant women. So we believe that everyone has a role to play in helping reduce the risk of this outbreak. Public health has proactively been taking steps to slow down the spread of this infection. So we strongly recommend that all organizations review and update their emergency plans and consider ways to continue essential services if there are interruptions to their operations. I'm really encouraged to see, people here when I came practicing social distancing, that you've made online or WebEx available for this meeting. Some of the things that I was going to talk about was already discussed by the city attorney. But in addition to those guidance, public health also is saying that if you're mildly sick with fever, you stay home. Call your doctor if you are concerned or if your symptoms worsen. Individuals who are elderly, have underlying health conditions, or pregnant should consider contacting their providers earlier when they are sick. Like I said, some of the things that I was going to talk about, the city attorney already talked about, but I do want to clarify. So the health officer order is for any gathering over 50 when they congregate. So if it's between 10 and 49, and the example is what you said, but they've decided to cancel, we're not really canceling them. We're not ordering that they stop it, but we're asking that they do it and ensure that there's social distancing, which is about 6 feet away from each other. And the other thing that I was going to recommend they already did, which was Zoom or any types of platform where they can still continue support groups without being close to each other. That's an option that we recommend. There was a question about the spas or massage parlors that wasn't specifically included, but again, we have to keep in mind that our goal in closing for this health officer order is to ensure that everybody is social distancing. So if they can adhere to those, not congregating more than 50, make sure that they're social distancing, then we're not closing some of the establishments. If there's any particular questions, like I said, I'll just answer them.
Just one question before I get to you, Councilmember Duran. Just shortly before our meeting started, we learned through the LA Times that the health department informed the Times that there were 5 reports in our community. That was news to us. So can you please tell us what we can know about the report of?
Sure. So normally, this is something that we do. Normally, when there's cases with any types of communicable disease, we don't we don't say where they're from because we want to protect the people's privacy. But today, the health department decided to provide where the cities are of the cases. So we did release that information that there's 5 cases from the confirmed cases of COVID-19 in West Hollywood, but I can't provide additional information, because we want to protect the privacy of the people.
So what do you expect us to take away from sharing that information?
So I think what we want to say is, like I said, there's community transmission, right? I think we have to assume that COVID-19 is all over. Because we're finding out as we test more people that there is community transmission, that sometimes we don't know where the source came from. Because usually we can, tell that it was a traveler or somebody got COVID-19 because they were exposed to somebody else who was sick. But right now we're finding out through testing that we don't know where the source came from. So that's why we're implementing all of these, guidance and even the health officer order to social distance, because we have to assume that it's all over, and we have to take precautions knowing that.
Okay, Mayor, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you. I do have 3 questions. You said that we've had 25 new cases today, bringing us up to 94 cases in the county of Los Angeles. I think there's been only 1 reported death thus far. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So looking at the 5 cases that were identified in West Hollywood, without getting into the individuals or the privacy issues you raised, there has been a distinction between people who are traveling and bringing the virus in, as opposed to people who are probably catching it through community source. Can you identify or disclose to us whether any of the 5 in our city were through international travel or unknown community basis?
So I can honestly say that I don't know that detailed information. We have 94 cases, so I don't know where the breakdown is.
Okay.
With
The
regards
next
to that.
question I have is looking nationally at what's happening. The state of Washington and the state of New York are the most hard hit. And the Bay Area just today decided in the 5-county area around the Bay Area to, in essence, use their police powers to quarantine everybody completely in those counties totaling 7 million people. We have a county that is far greater than that. Are we sensing that our growth in cases is going to be exponential, like Washington or New York, or are we uncertain at this point whether or not we're going to have the record levels that the states of Washington and New York are seeing?
So I can't predict that. Obviously, we're all hoping that it doesn't come to that. That's why the health officer order came out. So that we're hoping that with social distancing and if we're doing all these precautions, we can slow it down. That it's not gonna, that the numbers are not gonna be as bad. But I can't predict that. But I can say that we're really working with a lot of organizations, with healthcare providers, to identify people and test people and diagnose people that have COVID-19, and try to make sure that they're treated, they're isolated, so that we can slow down and give all these guidelines to the general public so that we can slow down the outbreak.
I have one last question and then I'm done, Mayor Pro Tem. This community, we've had experience with epidemic in the past because of what we had to do with HIV. And what we know is that with testing, contact tracing is a necessary tool for follow-up in order to notify those contacts that they too may have been exposed. It appears that we are not getting, as Americans, adequate number of tests to even commence the process of contact tracing. Do you have a sense of whether or not we're going to have readily available testing for Los Angeles County so that we can begin to do the contact tracing that's necessary to stop the spread?
So we are doing a lot of contact tracing. Whenever we identify people, we make sure that we do extensive interviews so that we know the people that are exposed, and we do our best to quarantine those people so that they don't infect people before they even, because we don't know if they're going to get the disease. With regards to testing, the Los Angeles Public Health Laboratory has some capacity. A few weeks ago, it was just the CDC that was doing the testing. We were sending our specimens to them. We do have capacity, some limited capacity. There are also 2 commercial labs that are able to test for COVID-19. And so it's just that our population is so large that we can't test quick enough and fast enough with this number of people. But we're working hard with state and federal to make sure that we have capacity to test the people that we need to test.
Okay, one last question, then I swear I'm done. When we have adequate tests available, how will they be distributed? Obviously, Cedars-Sinai is our closest hospital, but we have numerous other health clinics, nonprofit organizations that routinely do testing for other disease, ranging from the Gay and Lesbian Center to the Saban Free Clinic. Can we work with the county to get those tests available in our traditional partners to expand the level of testing?
So the tests right now with the private providers, they're going through the 2 commercial, testing, the 2 commercial labs that are doing testing. And then, like I said, we work with the hospitals to test some, people that are hospitalized. So for the clinics, they would go through their normal protocols on how they would request testing, and those are with the 2 commercial labs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For people who are listening from home, if I might just ask, we're hearing conflicting reports about when people should go in to test, what symptoms ought they be exhibiting, to what extent. Some people are reporting on various social media that they were discouraged from going in to get a test even though they were exhibiting some symptoms, because if they didn't have it, then they might contract it by being close to by being in close contact in an emergency room. So how would you advise people who are watching their symptoms, and how would you prioritize people who ought to be seeking testing immediately?
So right now, we're asking that for people who are mildly sick to just stay home and not go to their health care providers, right? Because it taxes the entire healthcare system. Right now, based on CDC guidelines, we're prioritizing testing for those who we know have been exposed to actual cases, or who have traveled from places where we know there was sustained community transmission. But in the hospitals, when even if they have severe illness, even though we don't know if they have a contact or they traveled, we would test them if the other diagnostic testing is negative for the other, for flu or other things that are has the same symptoms.
Okay, are there any additional questions? Thank you very much for being with us tonight, for sharing the information, and for all the work that you'll do in the coming weeks to help keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now returning to our item and various recommendations. Councilmember Meister, did you want to go next?
Yeah, and I just want to thank the mayor and Councilmember Heilman for bringing this forward. I just wanted to add, if we need to increase funding for meals, for meals for seniors and disabled and those with compromised immune systems who can't leave the house. We have West Hollywood Elementary School is closed, and I don't know how many students may get lunches that can't afford to get lunches otherwise, that maybe we can expand our contract with one of our providers, Project Angel Food or someone to increase delivery of meals. And then I think, and I had mentioned it before, and Councilmember Duran also, about having someone who can assist employees of local businesses to help them access unemployment and other benefits that they may need help navigating. And also, I guess my question for the city manager is, what are we doing to keep people updated in terms of technology? I'm getting a bunch of texts from the city of LA, from the mayor of LA, about what they're doing, and how they have my number, I don't know, but it'd be great if we were able to. I know we're doing things through social media, and we're all tweeting and retweeting and posting on Facebook, but not everyone is on Facebook or Twitter. So I don't know if texting or emails, and obviously our senior community may not be as active on social media as we are. Do you want to answer the question?
I can answer. I'll just kind of go down the list. So let's start with additional resources for food and meals. If the council wants to edit item number 5 here, which is the establishment of an emergency fund, and maybe bump that up to $75,000 and also include meal support as part of that, that would be helpful. I don't know if we're going to
I
spend
would
it all.
consider that a friendly amendment. Thank you.
And, in terms of information out right now, we've been really pushing out all of our information on social and through emails. We do have a reverse 911 directory. We're putting together materials that once we're done with today's proclamation and the announcements, we will do a push out as well to our residents.
Okay, great. And then just a thought, some of the people who are unfortunately going to be unemployed during this time, if they're healthy, maybe they can volunteer, along with them getting assistance that we're offering here, that maybe they can volunteer for delivery, for meal delivery, because apparently there is a real need for that, from what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and we will coordinate that. And I want to be, we have, and it's really a helpful thing. We're getting a lot of friendly recommendations and suggestions from people. Some of the items and some of the discussions sometimes require a lot of resources to gear up. So I have been in touch with a number of the hotels who have been expressing ideas like that, where they may be able to help coordinate and direct those resources themselves. So we're in conversations with them already. So, but those are great ideas.
Right. And then another thing we might want to think about is automatic pedestrian signals. We don't always have where the traffic signal allows a walk. You have to press the button, and people are, rightfully so, worried about pressing a button. So maybe that's something that can be automatic. I'm sure that that is something that can be programmed by our traffic people. And then just two other things. One is, and I mentioned this to Lauren Langer, that apparently some property owners that are looking to sell their building or rent an apartment while a tenant is still there, they're saying, well, we want to get in because we want to show this building, we want to show this apartment, and the tenant's like, I don't know what to do. So what I've mentioned is about social distancing, and that is something that the county and now the city is requiring, and that if they have questions, they should go to the city attorney. Then the other thing is we've had a lot of door-to-door petitioners, and also census. So what are we doing about that?
Great question. We can't do everything about everything, and nothing requires people to open their doors. There's a big push from the federal government to do much more of the census online, which is brilliant. But if you don't feel comfortable opening your door, don't open your door. That's a really important point.
Maybe we can put that out in our education
Definitely.
campaign as well. Are you good? Yep, thank you.
Councilmember Heilman?
I'm prepared to move the item with the suggestions that I've made, but I want to hear from you and the mayor.
Okay, Mayor, your comments?
I'm prepared to move the item as well.
I didn't quite hear that, I'm sorry.
He said he would
I
move
am
the item
prepared
as
to
well.
move the item as well.
Okay, I have just a few questions that came in from the public. In sort of along the lines of Councilmember Meister, Project Angel Food Support, I'm seeing news reports that they need help, so making sure that we connect with them. I understand they may be reaching out to the city for additional support in this time. Want to make sure that we are able to give them that support that they need. Councilmember Heilman, you mentioned the worker protections that were mentioned from Unite Here Local 11. Your direction is to give to staff is exactly what?
Well, we just got these this afternoon, late this afternoon, so it was too late to include them, but I wanted to give direction to the city manager to work with our local hoteliers to increase the training. And then there's a general recommendation in here regarding looking at deferring taxes in exchange for agreements not to lay off workers. And I think that was part of the thrust of the Unite Here's desire. In terms of training, I think that's a good suggestion that we encourage all of our local businesses, but especially our hotels, to provide adequate training. And I imagine many of them are already, but making sure that that's occurring. There was also a recommendation regarding enforcing our short-term rental law, which I believe we're doing already, to the extent that we're able to do it. So I'm sure that the city manager has a copy of that. If he doesn't, I can share it with him.
And there was a call today with the union. One of the, I think more of a larger kind of umbrella conversation is all of the interactions with the hotels and businesses on best practices. That's occurring now, and they're pretty on top of it. There is discussion at the state level for some emergency legislation, and we're going to work through our team of Helene and Hernan, and to work with Here United to coordinate with the state as they're drafting some statewide emergency policies at this time.
Okay, thank you. I spoke with a representative from Postmates. I know that food delivery is going to be in higher demand now. They're working on a rollout program in LA County that they've adopted in other areas to help those restaurants that are not yet on their platform. I assume other platforms will do the same, but just so people know that. I received some questions about CEQA permitting and city meetings and the billboard policies and other housing development. How are we handling those kinds of meetings, especially ones that are on a timeline?
Let's do the Postmates first, because that's actually fun. We do have resources at City Hall, and if Postmates or any of the service delivery apps want to connect with us, we'll help put them in touch with some of the businesses, because some of the businesses right now, the smaller restaurants that are really working just to keep their kitchens open and keep some employees going, this is new to them, and anything we could do to help facilitate that, if you would just pass that on to me. Okay. In regards to business as usual, we do have a number of big items coming down the pipeline. Like a real important one is getting the budget done. We are prioritizing our workflow to make sure that all of the major issues and items that are in the pipeline move forward. But as we've been seeing, the pandemic or the challenge that we've been dealing with changes constantly. So as of now, everything that is in the pipeline is moving through the pipeline. It's just going to be staggered and delayed a little bit. One of the concerns we have is, for example, today in Boston, all construction projects have been shut down. And I don't know if we're going to get an order like that at some point. I don't know if we're going to make a determination that we should not be sending inspectors out to look at commercial development. So what's happening now is we're looking at a delayed response to a number of things, but if things continue to ramp up, it could be more serious than that. So, as of now, I'm just asking everybody to be patient as we wait and see.
Two more business questions. One, large facilities like the PDC don't really fall under some of the categories that we identified through the emergency declaration. Are we advising that business be shut down in places like that as well?
We're working to push out all the information we're getting from the CDC, the state, and the county health department. It's really incumbent upon businesses and people visiting those businesses to protect themselves. It's some of the activities that you've seen in a number of businesses, unfortunately some of ours, it's not responsible to have large gathering areas. If any of the businesses are continuing to have meetings that exceed the threshold that's recommended by the state and county, and that changes between 50 and 250. I forget what the number is now. Kristen, what's the number now? Yeah, about 50. It's part of individuals' personal, well-being as well to avoid those spaces. So we will get advisory information out. We do have the working group right now with the Chamber of Commerce and other business leaders. So we're putting together collateral material, and we'll make sure we push that out.
I mention that because there are workers who, if their employers don't tell them that it's safe for them to work from home, they are required to come in. And so at this point, we're saying that they are still required to follow their employer's direction and not.
We don't, at this point, we don't have the authority to force a commercial business to not open up its office space. And I look to the city attorney, maybe at some point the state will give us that authority. And I frankly wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be a mandate that comes out eventually anyway. The best thing we could do is really push out the best practices and hope that our business community, which for the most part has always been pretty responsible, will be responsible in this area.
Okay, and then my last question, there have been concerns from the community about prioritizing access. I know some of that is addressed here in local grocery stores, more focused here on panic buying, but prioritizing access for our older adults who are in that vulnerable population category. I assume we can work with our grocery to make sure all the older adults who need access are getting what they need.
Yes, it's yeah, the panic buying has not really been a demonstration of the best of America. But I think that as things begin to calm down, we do have a number of social service resources that can be made available to assist our elderly population as they do need groceries and other supplies.
And as far as public safety first responders, how are we able to, is there equipment for them to be able to purchase to further protect yourselves? Do you have the equipment that you need? I'm seeing advisories about additional protective gear and things that people should be wearing in terms of response to public safety incidents. How can we support in that situation?
The information that we've been receiving from the county, from both fire and the sheriff's department, is that they are well equipped. They're both here if they want to add more to that, but everything that I've seen is the stockpiling of resources is definitely there and available for them.
Okay. That concludes my questions.
I'm prepared to move the item with the additional direction that's been given.
Okay, and I see that there's a second here.
Although we've learned that there is public comment. About 47 of the emails submitted were on the urgency items. So
Yes.
let's talk about the third one.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on this item before we
Okay.
move to the third, and then we're going to do public comment. Okay, so moving on to item 5G. Thank you, Madam City Attorney, for working on this over the weekend. I know I had sent you some information about this. This was an issue that was popping up in my inbox and in my text messages a lot, is to make sure we're able to keep people in their homes. Are we able to put a stop order on evictions entirely, or how, in effect, can you once again walk through how this would work?
Yeah. At the moment, I would suggest keeping this tailored. This raises a lot of complicated legal issues, and I think the best approach is keep it tailored to people who have been financially impacted by COVID-19 and are unable to make their rent. So at this moment, I think that's the best approach. As this situation progresses, if we need to expand it, we can look at that, but at this initial stage, I would recommend keeping it limited. So it is, as I mentioned, is limited to people who have been financially impacted. They have to provide evidence to their landlord. They can do it by text or email if they have communicated with their landlord by text or email in the past. They don't have to meet in person and show that they've lost their wages or that they've been homesick, whatever the issue is that has required them to lose wages. And there's a couple other protections listed in here, but we've put this in place for 60 days. It can be extended after that, or as I mentioned, if the governor issues a similar rule, we can also suspend it at the local level.
And if there are, this doesn't preclude issues that would, under normal reporting, things that are not allowed. For example, if you live in a non-smoking building, people are not allowed to now smoke and not be evicted, or have noise issues or other, quality of life things that people would normally have enforced on them.
Correct. This
Okay.
only addresses tenants who are unable to pay their rent. And I'll say one other thing, that the courts are slowing down as well. So even if a landlord was interested in evicting their tenant for other reasons, those processes are going to take much longer than they would under normal circumstances. So there's a general slowdown in the court process anyway at the moment.
Okay, Councilmember Duran.
I have a couple of questions about this item for the city attorney. Under section 2, paragraph B, which has to do with the evidentiary proof required. I know that we're waiting to see what the governor and state legislature do with respect to eviction statewide, but we are not preempted, right? We can go beyond whatever the state does, correct?
We are adopting this under both our police power and our emergency power to take immediate action given this health pandemic. So while it is a very complicated area of the law, and yes, I believe that we are not preempted from addressing this specific issue for a temporary period of time.
Okay, so my concern about the evidentiary proof that's required under this paragraph is that the coronavirus epidemic actually started in January. And although all the emergency resolutions we're seeing at the federal, state, and local levels are happening now, there are people who were disabled financially prior to this week. And so the way that I read this section, it appears that in order to enable yourself of use of this ordinance, it requires that within 30 days of the date when the rent was first due, that notice has to be given to the landlord. If somebody is past due on February rent or March rent prior to us enacting this ordinance because of coronavirus, it seems to me they would be precluded from making use of this ordinance the way it's worded. Do we have to have a specific timeline in there? Or in the alternative, can we make it retroactive if somebody has the evidence to show that they missed the February or March rent because of the financial impact to them because of the epidemic?
That's an interesting question. This is definitely an ordinance of first impression, and we're dealing with these very complicated issues. I will say this: we're tying it to the date that West Hollywood declared local emergency in order so that we can adopt this under our emergency powers. So while we may be able to shorten the time that they have to provide the notification, I'm not sure that I would be comfortable making it retroactive to before we declared local emergency, because that's what's triggering our ability to do this.
Could we eliminate the phrase that says within 30 days after the date the rent is due? And just leave it generally that if the tenant notifies the landlord in writing of lost income and inability to pay due to the coronavirus epidemic?
I think we could. It's a little difficult to answer that question, in the moment, because there's a lot of different issues at play. We want the landlord to have some notice.
Right. I'm just cognizant of the fact it's March the 16th. People
Right.
may be already past due because they have been laid off. We know that 4 of our hotels have closed. We know that there have been significant layoffs already, and people may be past due in their March rent, and I would want him or her to avail themselves of this emergency protection, even though the due date was prior to the enactment of the emergency ordinance.
Let me think about some language while we
No problem.
ask a
I just
couple more
wanted to raise
questions.
that. I think that was my only question on this item. Thank you.
And I know that you had also said if the state passes something, it's been made apparent to me that that Gavin Newsom has issued protocols with regard to evictions, and that his executive order authorizes local governments to enact a moratorium for both residential and commercial eviction if we so choose. So I would hope that, given that direction from the governor, once you review it, of course, that we are following suit. I think it's the intention of this council to protect our residents as much as possible. This item does not specifically speak to commercial evictions, but I'm not sure if we're able to take action on that because it wasn't in the item, but
We're still researching the commercial eviction topic. However, this notification from the governor is very helpful as we continue that legal research. And as this progresses, we can look into that second element of this because we realize the financial impacts to commercial businesses are going to be just as significant as they are to the individual tenants.
yeah, it would be my intention, and I would guess probably all of the council, that we give you the discretion to help our especially our small businesses, but everyone in that circumstance.
Okay.
Mayor, do you have any comments on this?
No, I do not, thanks.
Okay, so I think that concludes all of council member comments on these 3 items. I know we need to hear public comment before we take a vote.
Yes, we will hear the public comment. Assistant City Clerk Crowder will read them. We're going to do this in the same manner as if they were here. It would be 2 minutes reading their public comment, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Take it away.
And also, Mayor Pro Tem, one of the things the council could consider, since this is a health crisis and we want to get out of the room as soon as possible, the city attorney advised that if you wanted to do 1-minute readings for public comment, you could do that if the council so chooses.
I would support that, and I would also support us getting them in writing so we can follow along if that's possible, or if you can give them to us at a later date, that would be helpful.
Yes, we have all of them available via email. Our office can compile all of them together and share them with you by item, if that helps.
And are these the emails you've already forwarded to us?
No.
Okay, these are new ones, okay.
Yeah, this is the new creation between communications and the city clerk's office for an e-notify system.
And I think anyone who did submit through that system, their intention was to have it read aloud because that was what was committed to online. So I do think that to honor at least that commitment to the public who did comment through that process, we have to have something shared aloud today. We might want to rethink that in the future, but right now, that was the commitment we made to the public.
Okay.
Yes, and every comment that was submitted by 8 p.m. will be read.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly Kilmer, West Hollywood. It will be difficult for many West Hollywood residents to pay bills and rent in the coming months. I hope that the City Council and the Mayor remember that West Hollywood was built on renters' rights. Please do not forget those of us who are renters and are already being hit hard with the loss of income due to COVID-19. Thank you. Jeremy Morin, Burbank. It is absolutely imperative that we must move swiftly into the transition of closing businesses where large crowd gatherings are still taking place. Restaurants, bars, and other related businesses are still bustling with individuals who may or may not be spreading the coronavirus to employees and patrons of the business. If we can do what we can to limit the spread of this coronavirus, we will help our friends and neighbors in the long run. If we look out for each other rather than thinking, it will not affect me, I'm young, or any other mindset of the sort, we will all be weaker as a result. Joseph, West Hollywood. What should apartment managers do to keep common areas clean to help mitigate COVID-19? Lucas John Junkin. We don't need every person in LA coming to WeHo right now or passing through. Close traffic into WeHo on Santa Monica Boulevard and Sunset. If you need to leave or come back, use Laurel via Melrose or Laurel via Hollywood and proceed to where you are going. Set up food banks if needed for residents by residents. We don't need the bar population and usual tourists right now. Take care of the people who live here and stop enabling WeHo be a breeding ground for non-residents. Karen O'Keefe, West Hollywood. During this time of crisis, it is reassuring to live in a city with a strong commitment to human services. I want to commend West Hollywood for making the difficult decision to cancel city events to promote social distancing. Social distancing slows the spread of the virus, reducing the burden on the healthcare system. We've seen in Italy that failing to take prompt and dramatic measures to slow the pandemic leads to a rapid increase in cases, overburdening the healthcare system. Hospitals do not have enough beds or ventilators, meaning they have to decide who will live and who will unnecessarily die. We can save lives by staying at home. A new study found the coronavirus is infectious even before people are symptomatic. In this brief window, we have to reduce the death toll. I was dismayed to hear that bars, including in our city, were packed through the weekend. It was a relief to see the governor take more dramatic action, ordering the closure of bars. While I am grateful for bold action to save lives, I'm also very concerned that these measures will cost many people their jobs. I got beeped up. Dan Wenzel, West Hollywood. Yesterday, for Sunday Fun Day, the bars were packed along Santa Monica Boulevard. Clearly, the messages about social distancing, about the ease of transmitting the virus, even if one is not yet showing symptoms, and the risks of transmitting the virus to vulnerable populations are not getting through. Joe Janacek, West Hollywood. LA City took some extraordinary measures tonight, Sunday, related to the COVID-19 virus. What emergency measures will WeHo City take? Kelsey Smith, West Hollywood. Please follow Mayor Garcetti's decision and close all restaurants, bars, and gyms in West Hollywood until further notice. Please close. Do not subject employees of these businesses to COVID-19 because they have not closed. Julian Martinez, West Hollywood. As we come to grips with unprecedented global events that are having a significant impact in our community, they emphasize the relevance of sustainability and self-sufficiency during these difficult times. Increasing the number of electric vehicle charging stations in the city would advance the sustainability vision. I encourage city planners to develop creative solutions to provide more free electric car charging stations to residents. Perhaps solar or renewable energy-powered charging stations on every block would establish West Hollywood as a pioneer city promoting green energy and self-sufficiency. Callan Martz, West Hollywood. I urge the City of West Hollywood to take aggressive action to combat the spread of the coronavirus, including closing bars, gyms, theaters, etc., and limiting restaurant seating. The city should also put strong measures in place to support our local businesses, such as encouraging takeout and delivery, small business loans at 0% interest, eviction moratoriums, etc. We can't wait another day for bold action. Thank you. Jamie, West Hollywood. I believe the mayor should follow what Mayor Garcetti did and have the bars and restaurants in West Hollywood closed for at least 2 weeks due to the coronavirus situation. People are not staying home and overcrowding locations in West Hollywood, which makes it dangerous for everyone else. I think a 2-week closure period would help the situation. We're never going to make any progress if we don't start now. Matthew Rose, West Hollywood. During this pandemic, I have not heard one word from the management company that oversees my building. While you cannot force communication, please urge property management companies to reach out to the tenants at what is a very scary time for residents, especially elderly tenants. Thank you, and please be safe. Kyle Payne, West Hollywood. West Hollywood should adopt the same closure guidelines as Los Angeles bars, gyms, restaurants, takeout only. As feasible as it should also adopt the homeless safety programs. As a wealthy city with extraordinary visibility, WeHo could lead the charge in forcing large employers to pay employees during this closure and in helping smaller employers do the same. Be a role model. Teresa, West Hollywood. Will the City of West Hollywood follow Mayor Garcetti's public order from March 15th for the City of Los Angeles, including a moratorium on residential and commercial evictions, closing bars and nightclubs, banning dine-in restaurants and entertainment facilities, movie theaters, gym, and fitness centers? James Johnson, West Hollywood. Please don't close the gyms. It's possible to wipe down equipment and maintain social distance when working out. For many, the gym is a place to maintain not only our physical health, but our mental health as well. When I've been stressed out, nothing helps me feel better than a good workout. If needed, scheduled classes can be canceled where it is not practical to maintain distances, but we need some options for fitness in these stressful times. Valerie Turignan, West Hollywood. The city of West Hollywood is often a leader and at the forefront of progressive agendas when it comes to protecting its residents. Would the council consider a resolution that supports the freeze of all interest rates on credit cards during the COVID-19 crisis? And if so, then lobby the appropriate state and federal officials, as they have particularly been taking guidance from local government at this time of crisis. Jerry Gardner, West Hollywood. Please extend the City of Los Angeles's bar and restaurant closing order to West Hollywood, both to contain/mitigate COVID-19 pandemic and to ensure that West Hollywood does not get an invasion of folks trying to get around the City of LA restrictions. Also, please temporarily ban the collection of We Hope Proposition petition gathering and in-your-face activity clearly at odds with pandemic mitigation efforts, and if necessary, extend the time for submission of the petitions. Keith, West Hollywood. Last evening, the Mayor of Los Angeles, effective 12 a.m. March 16, 2020, closed to the public gyms and fitness studios. 24-Hour Fitness on Santa Monica Boulevard says they are not in LA County, so they are open. Are you kidding me? That gym is a petri dish with the COVID-19. Why are you allowing this to remain open? Jason Moore, West Hollywood. Follow the exact same restrictions, closures instated by the City of Los Angeles for consistency and the safety of the region's citizens. Natasha, West Hollywood. Please put a ban on restaurants and bars being open in West Hollywood to prevent the further spread of the COVID-19. Saddle Ranch in particular concerns me. I've witnessed even recently that they cram up to 400 people into their building every night, leaving no room to practice social distancing. This selfish business behavior enables rapid growth of the virus. I'm very concerned about this upcoming St. Patrick's Day and weekend. Please make a serious effort to do something about this because it doesn't look like anything will be done on their part. Even more concerning is the fact that other restaurants and bars may be operating with the same lack of consideration of the global crisis we are in. Be the change. Thank you. Rod Sprott, West Hollywood. I very much appreciate the steps the City of West Hollywood is taking to comply with the governor and CDC. However, driving along Santa Monica Boulevard on Sunday night, it looked like business as usual. Only the Abbey has closed. Perhaps by the time of the meeting tonight, this will have changed, but if not, what actions will the city take to curtail restaurants, bars, etc.? Zenos Mason, Los Angeles. I'm a physician. My address is formally within Los Angeles, but I am a member of our community of West Hollywood. I strongly advocate for the immediate closure of gyms, clubs, and in-restaurant dining. My recommendation is based on my clinical experience in caring for patients with acute respiratory failure and viral pneumonia, and epidemiologist data from the outbreaks in Asia, and on the directives from the CDC and local public health departments. Manny Rodriguez, West Hollywood. Please keep restaurants open. I've been to WeHo restaurants during the past few days and have not found them to be crowded. Restaurants feel very safe, and many people like myself use our local restaurants on a regular basis for basic meals. Closing restaurants would create an unintended consequence by overpopulating other venues where food is sold. Carrie Balbone, West Hollywood. Thank you for your quick response to the pandemic. The cancellation of public gatherings and city events will help slow the spread in our community. I, like everyone, have many concerns and questions. I would like to help our community in any way possible. Here are two of my top concerns and some suggestions. 1, treatment capacity at Westside hospitals. Cedars and UCLA will likely be overwhelmed quickly. I would like to urge that the city contact all local West Hollywood physician offices to ask their assistance in treating citizens locally, particularly our older adults and disabled. 2, since many will be homebound, it would be nice for concerned citizens and community commissioners and board members to help connect with community members for support. Social isolation in a city that typically has support services is a concern. I would like to help create call and email programs to augment the city response and help us all stay connected. The program could be an opt-in program or a series of virtual meetings. Scott J. Harris, West Hollywood. WeHo should be protecting its citizens and contribute to the protection of all people in the state. LA City Mayor Garcetti has ordered the closure of all non-essential public spaces, including bars, clubs, dine-in restaurants, gyms, theaters, etc. WeHo is the home to one of the largest bar/club and eatery scenes, has many theaters, and an abundance of gyms. These are all known as a major hotspot for transmission. WeHo should follow suit and adopt the same measures as the City of LA, including the closure of restaurants for dine-in services, theaters, and gyms, as well as adopt measures to limit gatherings, protect against evictions, provide food and elderly services, and provide economic assistance to those in need. We host many elderly citizens and many citizens with compromised immune systems due to drug and alcohol use, mental health issues, HIV, and other diseases. These may be drastic measures, but they are necessary to protect our community. It is time to act for the greater good, despite potential economic hardship. Tyler DiNucci, West Hollywood. Please follow the lead of the City of Los Angeles and shut down gyms, restaurants, but allow takeout delivery, and bars in West Hollywood until further notice. People keep putting themselves in high-risk environments, and the virus will continue to spread without drastic measures. Thank you. Alice, West Hollywood. In these uncertain times, my anxiety has gone through the roof. I've struggled with anxiety and depression my entire life, was on pills for years until I decided enough was enough. My medication is now exercise. I needed to be a productive and healthy human, and if gyms shut down for weeks, I fear that my mental health will deteriorate. Mental health is health. If I lose it, I lose everything. I believe that gyms should remain open but limit their classes/group fitness. Gyms should provide members with gloves. All members should wear gloves while working to avoid cross-contamination. Bubba from Culver City. We need to follow Garcetti's lead and shut down all restaurants, bars, gyms, and events of more than 50 people to slow the spread of this virus and save lives. Kelsey, West Hollywood. The City of West Hollywood needs to adhere to the guidelines set by Mayor Garcetti and close restaurants, bars, and gyms to slow the spread of COVID-19. For individuals and families financially burdened by this crisis, the city should halt evictions, foreclosures, and the discontinuation of utilities. Lupe de los Santos, West Hollywood. I believe if we truly want to stop the spread of the coronavirus, we should put public hand sanitizers on public transportation like the Metro train and city buses. We must help the public from this deadly disease. Any media can contact me. I pray that the City Council endorses my idea for public safety. Thank you. Dakota Lupo, West Hollywood. In a time of crisis, we need leadership. The City Council has done its job as municipal servants. They've pointed to websites, policy by Governor Newsom, LA County guidelines, meeting times, but that's about it. As devoted as I know our council is, the part-time nature of their job has left a void of continuous social and community leadership. I don't blame them for this. This is the nature of many cities the size of WeHo, but this crisis has made it evident that we need more. This responsibility is incumbent upon the community as well. Yesterday, people still gathered in close quarters at bars and restaurants. Today, few community members will view or even know about this council meeting. Most WeHo community members couldn't tell you the name of one council member, let alone how many members we have. It's our job as a community to be more involved and create closer local relationships so that in a crisis like this, those bonds allow us to act with responsibility and efficacy. Let this crisis allow our community to rebuild their voice and efforts to support one another. Our city council can go far in leading the way, not by tweets to minimal people. Mark Hughes, West Hollywood. Our city, like our nation, faces a major health crisis. The World Health Organization said loudly and clearly that fast action now is the only way to help prevent possible catastrophe. WeHo should close all bars and restaurants entirely, except delivery. If we keep restaurants and bars open in any capacity, then LA residents will flock here because their bars and restaurants are closed. WeHo should implement curfews between perhaps 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. There are far too many people still going out in groups, endangering the lives and health of neighbors in our community, which has elderly and others with compromised immune systems or other health issues, putting them at high risk. WeHo is a small city. Our population is small. However, we see a large number of LA residents and tourists come through our city, and we can't afford to fail to recognize the risks posed to our own residents, as well as to tourists and travelers in our city. Every day we delay is a day more people are infected, more people become sick, and more people will die. Maria, North Hollywood. Please close down the WeHo bars. I love them just as much as everyone else, but we really need to practice social distancing. It's not forever. We'll get through this, but as a community, we need to work together and try to do our best to make sure this does not spread even more. Let's take care of each other. Troy, West Hollywood. Economic insecurity is the primary point I want to address in my comments and the motivation of a proposal I would like the council to consider. I support an eviction moratorium. I would appreciate if you would also consider requiring landlords to not pursue eviction for people who fall behind as a result of the financial impacts we will suffer over the coming months. There must be a rule in place that allows for rent catch-up without draconian collection efforts or displacement. Leaseholders who are 55 plus and who can provide or prove needs should be fully exempt from eviction in 2020 for failure to pay rent and a program put in place. West Hollywood and the area of Los Angeles already has a crisis of an inability for seniors to age in place. This pandemic is no time to refuse them help, and they should not be forced into a social worker situation to assist them when local authorities have it within their power to do the things outlined. C, West Hollywood. There are restaurants remaining open, and I'd like the mayor to clearly decree that we will follow LA in their closure and efforts to stop the COVID spread. I am a longtime regular at Zinc, where I know employees are asked to work 365 days a year and are now going in during the pandemic. I also understand Olivetta is remaining open. I worry about the workers, and I do worry about the people who still want to dine in. Lisa Beach, West Hollywood. Though none of us will be able to attend personally, it is my hope that the main thrust of this evening's discussions will focus on COVID-19 and how to keep West Hollywood and its residents safe, sane, and afloat. First and foremost, I implore you to follow the newly instituted Santa Moratorium Code for evictions, utility shutoffs, and parking tickets, if not going further if possible. The past 2 weeks have already devastated the motion picture industry in which I work, and the writing is on the wall for countless other paycheck-to-paycheck employees in a variety of businesses. I know that come April 1st, I will not be able to pay my rent, though I will do my best to make an effort to give him something. My landlord has made it clear to me on numerous occasions over the years that he wants me out because I'm under rent control and now pay half of what new tenants pay. The fear which has struck so many of us WeHo residents on so many levels in the past 2 weeks could be greatly alleviated if we knew that eviction. Richard Ayub from Project Angel Food. Emergency request to the City of West Hollywood City Council. Dear Mayor D'Amico and council members, all of us at Project Angel Food are concerned for those most vulnerable in our West Hollywood community. This includes the 40 people served by Project Angel Food who live in West Hollywood and are currently fighting cancer, diabetes, heart disease, HIV/AIDS, and other illnesses. The Centers for Disease Control has listed these conditions among those that make individuals most vulnerable to the coronavirus. Project Angel Food is taking immediate steps to ensure the people we serve receive uninterrupted meal service and connection to our program. We are providing 3 weeks' worth of shelf-stable food along with our prepared meals. This comes at a time of greatly increased expenses to Project Angel Food and a decline in revenue, over $250,000, from fundraising events that have been canceled. We will be submitting an emergency grant request to the City of West Hollywood. Brandon Pandaligan, West Hollywood. The council should be preparing for the worst-case COVID scenario, giving residents comfort in knowing there is competence locally, even if our federal government lacks it. Be proactive. Figure out what emergency powers you have and use them. This is an actual emergency. The city should develop a plan to ration access to the grocery stores, perhaps by parking permit zone. Residents need to know that they will be able to buy food and household necessities, but without some organization, we will have hoarding and be unable to practice social distancing. We shouldn't be fighting or endangering each other over bread, bananas, and toilet paper. The city should encourage restaurants to turn into food delivery services, redeploying wait and busing staff into delivery personnel. This will reduce the number of people who will be laid off and potentially create new jobs during this crisis. Enact any tax incentives that could encourage this. The city must also deploy a plan to help elderly and other Chelsea Schwartz, West Hollywood. I would like the City Council to address evictions and aid/relief during this state of emergency when a giant portion of residents are now unemployed. Will West Hollywood follow suit like Los Angeles on issuing a moratorium on eviction? Seppi Shine, West Hollywood. Thank you to the City Council, City Manager, and staff for your quick and great response to the coronavirus crisis. I am proud to be a resident of West Hollywood, and I love our city. This crisis demands that we as a collective change and change rapidly. We are being called to either be the best of ourselves, remain the same, or be the worst. West Hollywood can be the best by practicing kindness and compassion in each moment and leading in this crisis as we led when our city was formed and when we led during the HIV/AIDS crisis by protecting our residents and bringing our community together. I support the emergency measures that are being considered tonight, and I urge the City Council to adopt them and the City Manager to not just limit but to order a shutdown of all bars, nightclubs, restaurants, except for takeout and delivery, gyms, and other non-essential public establishments. I also urge the City Council and Manager to establish a moratorium, if allowed by law, on evictions. Stephanie Harker supports all of the urgency resolutions. Adam Bass, West Hollywood. In the discussion of potentially limiting retail sales, Councilmember Meister is right to consider spas and massage parlors. However, please be cautious about limiting essential services like hardware stores, pet food and supply stores, etc. I trust the City Manager will make wise decisions, but please don't create any blanket decisions as our pets need to be fed and home repairs must still be made. Andrew Reback, West Hollywood. As city residents, our family, myself, my spouse, my grandfather, and our loved ones thank our city staff, attorney, manager, and council members for their continuing action during this time. We appreciate consistent information from the City of West Hollywood and are grateful for your continued service during crisis. I serve as the current chair of the city's Human Services Commission, and while we will likely miss some future meetings, I want to profoundly thank our city staff for continuing to work on all essential services for our city's most needy residents, and for their ongoing work with our community partners and service providers so folks can get their needs met during this extraordinary time. Please continue to provide information to the public in all ways possible. Personally, I would like to express appreciation to the City Council, City Manager, and entire staff for acting as a full-time Human Services Commission during this time of need. Your actions can provide assurance that the needs of city residents.
How many more comments do we have?
1, 2.
Okay, thanks.
Genevieve Morel on behalf of the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. The West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce is working closely with the city and its agencies, including the state of California, to ensure we get information out to the businesses with access to resources. We applaud the city in its leadership role and ability to step in to help our business community. We've never faced something so drastic and abrupt. Small businesses operate on a very slim net profit, and this unprecedented situation will challenge our business community, so we need your help. We need your help with local solutions. We need financial aid, both employees and employers. We need your influence with our state and county elected officials. We are all dealing with an unpredictable situation with no understanding of its timetable and seek your leadership. In the short term, we need financial support, the long-term support for rebuilding our business community. And this is our last one. David Dickerson of Kitchen 24. Dear Paul and City Council, please help. Please consider the requests and needs of this city's small businesses provided by the City of West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I believe in this city and I know that we will prevail. Thank you and be well.
All right, well, it appears our recommendations in the direction that we're heading is consistent with where the majority of our comments came tonight. There was a comment about best practices to advise owners of buildings that have common areas, so I assume when we issue our advisories, we can include best practice information. There were comments both publicly and from the council tonight about the signature gatherers. While we understand it is your legal right, please consider the community concerns that are expressed about sending people to individuals' doors, especially those who are quite vulnerable. There was a concern expressed about utility shutoffs, and so the one question I did want to raise was, have we been in contact with, especially Edison, also the gas company, about any projected shutoffs and making sure people have access to the utilities they need?
Everything that we've heard right now is the utility should be fine. The only hiccup we had is when Councilmember Meister's power was turned off in her neighborhood, but that was just a technical blip. There's, at this point, water, electricity, and gas, all traditional services should be running.
Great. If there were any planned outages during the foreseeable future, I hope that we can get those reversed to make sure people have access to what they need. If there are no further comments, we will now take action. Madam City Clerk.
So we will take action on all 3 urgency items. And for the benefit of Mayor D'Amico, we will do a voice vote.
Okay.
Was there any clarification on the language on the 30 days notice for landlord tenants?
You know, looking at the governor's new executive order, it notes that he declared a state of emergency on March 4th. So I certainly don't think that we could make it active for any rent that was due before the statewide declaration of emergency was called. And so I don't think it could apply to February rent, or March rent, because March rent would be due March 1st, right? So I think the best approach is to leave the language the way it is, because it will apply to rent that becomes due after we've adopted this ordinance.
Okay. I wish there was a way that we could figure out a way to assist those who are in dire straits at the moment. Because really this is prospective. What we're anticipating is to help those people who fall past due April 1st, but it doesn't provide any relief for people who are currently in crisis.
The one thing I came up with is for March rent, if they could provide the notification to the landlord within 5 days of adoption of this ordinance, that might provide a little wiggle room for people who know right now that they're going to be in trouble if they could get documentation to their landlord within the next few days. But I just don't want to go too far backwards, because the landlords didn't have notice that this was going to be coming, and it seems...
I understand.
I'm reading this a little differently, because it says a landlord who knows that a tenant cannot pay shall not serve a notice, file, or prosecute an unlawful detainer action, or otherwise seek to evict a non-payment of rent. So it seems to me that even if the landlord knows after they initiate it, they're not allowed to prosecute it if they now have noticed that the tenant is unable to pay the rent due to COVID.
I actually think that's true, and it also provides a defense to an unlawful detainer action. We wrote that language specifically in that this provides a defense to the tenant in an unlawful detainer action. So we tried to make it as helpful as we could.
So even if the rent were due in February or the beginning of March, if the landlord, it takes some time to file the 3-day notice, et cetera, if the landlord continues to prosecute it after they've been given notice that the tenant cannot pay, it would violate this provision.
Can we add language to clarify that? Because I think that would be really persuasive with a bench officer. That if the action's being prosecuted, even though...
That language is in the ordinance. It actually says,
Are you talking about D?
file or prosecute an unlawful detainer action.
So with that language,
Paragraph?
does that address your
In
concern?
section 2B.
Oh, B.
And how do we reconcile that with the language in section 2B, as in boy?
I'm referring to section 2B.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A landlord who knows that a tenant cannot pay some or all of the rent temporarily for the reasons set forth above shall not serve a notice, file, or prosecute an unlawful detainer action, or otherwise seek to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent. A landlord knows of the tenant's inability if the tenant within 30 days that the rent is due notifies the landlord in writing. So it would cover March if the tenant
Get
notified.
them the information
Yeah,
soon.
So our legislative intent is that this is illustrative of an example of putting the landlord on notice, but not a requirement.
no, it is a requirement that the landlord be on notice, but they don't have to be on notice before they file the 3-day notice.
Okay? I'm glad we're making this record. In the event that a clever defense lawyer wants to pull the legislative intent behind this, they can watch the transcript of this hearing.
Okay, does that address your concern?
I think so. As long as everybody, the 4 or 5 of us agree that if a landlord is prosecuting somebody for inability to pay rent due to coronavirus, it can even apply when the language here that says it has to be given in writing within 30 days after the rent is due is not the only way in which a landlord would know. A landlord could also know other ways.
That's true.
Okay. Councilmember Meister.
I was just going to say that we can also make sure that on our website that we have information about our rental assistance programs that we already provide.
Yes.
Okay. So with those comments,
Oh, don't we have a motion for all 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, or
We're
we want to
gonna
do
a voice vote.
individual?
So it's motion by Councilmember Heilman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Horvath, and we're going to do a voice vote. Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Heilman,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath,
Aye.
Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to, I believe item 4A is next that we are supposed to consider as part of the urgency items. Are there any additional comments on public safety that we need to discuss tonight?
I just had 3 questions or comments. One, I noticed that we have a number of deputies who speak other languages, but I didn't notice Russian among them, and that would be an issue that I hope that can be addressed at some point in the future. Secondly, with a lot of people being at home, I'm worried that we're going to see a spike in domestic violence cases, so I would hope that the sheriffs will monitor that. And then finally, we occasionally get reports of drug-related activity at certain establishments that have all now been closed due to the recent order. How do you want us to handle that kind of information that we receive? Should we forward it directly to you or to the department? Forward it directly to you, Ed? Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Are there questions? Because we do have some public comment on this item. No questions? No questions? Okay, we'll go to public comment on item 4A.
Alicia Hollinger, West Hollywood. I read that police will be cutting down on arrests due to overcrowding in jails. There is already so much new crime in WeHo. With less regular citizens out and about, I fear the crime will get worse. What are police doing to prevent that? And Stephanie Harker, West Hollywood. I want to commend the sheriffs and the staff for the improvements on the east side in general, and specifically in Plummer Park. Although there are ongoing issues with safety, things have definitely improved. Many of the neighbors still have serious concerns about response times in emergencies, and we have all been hopeful that a substation, for which we have been asking for 10 years, would make it easier for deputies to reach this side of town more quickly. To read in the staff report that the improvements in the park are in lieu of the safety center is disheartening. Many of us feel both are needed, as the serious concerns are not solely for Plummer Park, but for the entire east side, particularly the gateway with its large transient population. Please consider moving forward with a permanent office somewhere on the east side. Thank you.
One question I had, how do people sign up for the reverse 911 calls?
I don't know. We're going to look at that. I spoke with David Wilson. We're going to look at that tomorrow, and we'll push information out. The system's designed in two ways. One is that folks can register for it, or two is that we can make it mandatory and we just push it out to everyone. So we're going to be looking at that, and we'll get some more information out.
I think the more information we're pushing out, the better. Any other questions on this item? Okay, I believe we need to take action to move it forward. It's not just a receive and file. Okay, go ahead.
Comment, sorry. I just wanted to thank the station volunteers for their 1,889 donated hours, they really help with a lot of different things, including placards, illegal placards. So, thank you.
And I will just say thank you in advance to everything you're about to see in the coming weeks. We know that in unprecedented times, you'll have unprecedented calls. And so we thank you in advance for all the ways that you'll help keep us safe in this difficult and uncertain time. With that, we have a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heilman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Horvath. For a voice vote, Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Heilman.
Aye.
Councilmember Meister.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath.
Yes.
Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
The item passes.
Okay, thank you. Now going back to our consent agenda, we removed item 2I. I believe we want to take public comment on any consent agenda items before we take a vote on our consent agenda, remembering that we added several items to our consent agenda tonight.
Yes.
So Steve Martin has left the building, so we will turn it over to the city clerk for public comment on our consent agenda items.
Karen Ayers, West Hollywood, indicated her support of item 2V as in Victor. Rob Bergstein, West Hollywood, indicated his opposition to item 2W. Stephanie Harker spoke in support of item 5D. Seppi Shine indicated her support of item 5C. And Gayula Gangizer submitted a comment on item 2W. I am the president of the West Hollywood Lions Club. On behalf of the club, I have requested that the City of Beverly Hills reinstate the lease of the log cabin to the West Hollywood Lions Club, as we are best positioned to continue managing it without any political interest or benefit. We have been providing the log cabin to the service of the community since 1936, hosting recovery groups since 1948, and we continued even after the lease expired in 1977. If it is determined that the lease is given to the City of West Hollywood, we request that the City of West Hollywood sublease the property to us at a fair price. Our club is one of the oldest in LA, received its charter from Lions Club International in 1926. LCI is the parent organization of clubs operating in 150 countries and geographical locations around the world. All such clubs have as their primary functions the performance of activities which must serve to alleviate in some way a need in their respective communities, which is financed through funds raised from members of the public. LCI and its chartered clubs are not charitable.
Is that our last public comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, council member comments before we pass our consent agenda. Councilmember Heilman.
Yes, just thank you. Item 2G, which is the Arts Festival feasibility study. I'm in support of doing the Arts Festival, but we conducted a survey here, and I would just ask that our staff not rely too heavily on this survey. It was primarily self-selected, online type of survey. Half of the people who responded about half weren't even residents. So I think there's a little bit of skewing here in terms of the information, but I support the recommendation overall. I just think in terms of the format of the festival, we should be careful not to rely on that survey too much. Item 2K is an agreement for services for a transportation demand data. Obviously, I think we need to not go forward with this at this time. I'm in favor of the agreement, but in terms of the actual travel data, it doesn't make sense to gather it right now. And I see the city manager shaking his head. And I would just ask if we could hold item 2U to another meeting for discussion. This is your item and the mayor's item.
Okay, you want to hold that for further future discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. And Councilmember Meister?
Thank you. Starting with attendance, I represented the West Side Cities COG at the SCAG CEHD meeting. The majority voted to have SCAG staff look at an alternative formula for calculating RENA numbers. However, the regional board did not accept our recommendation and instead voted to move forward with staff's recommendation. So I just giving everyone the heads up that this is something that we're going to need to discuss in the near future. And in the meantime, I think that we should be talking to our state representatives and continue talking to SCAG and HCD. I stopped by the West Hollywood Homeless Services Connect Day, and I just want to thank all of our contracted and collaborative partners. More than 30 participated to serve more than 80 people experiencing homelessness. They provided everything from flu shots and Hep A vaccines to clothing and food, and a direct connect to a range of other services, including shelter and housing. Lunch was provided to all participants through the generous donation of box lunches from David Dickerson of Kitchen 24. Pavilions donated lunches for all of the service providers. Thank you, Sammy Choza from Pavilions. Ron Kaplan donated city packs, and Adidas donated backpacks and socks. Mark Anawalt and Rachel Warren donated their time and provided more than 30 haircuts. And also, on behalf, I'm sure, of all of us, I'd like to acknowledge the incredible work of Elizabeth Anderson, Diane Kahn-Epstein, Jenny Ivanova, Katie Egan, and Corey Plank of the City's Strategic Initiatives Division for doing really an amazing job of organizing this year's events. Regarding consent calendar, I just have a few comments. One is on item 5B, the Housing Element Progress Report. I thought one of the most important tables was that, the one that shows our average of, the average of all residents' income level, which shows, 53% as being low, very low, low, and moderate, and most of that, 44% being extremely low, very low, low, versus 47% above moderate, and yet the new housing that's provided, if you look at it by income level, only 13% is very low, low, and moderate, and 87% of it was above moderate. And so I know that we all want to see housing being built that we need, and I challenge staff to come up with a better way of producing housing that we need for income levels that need housing. My only other comment is on 5C, the inclusionary housing requirements for projects in commercial zones, moving to studying to see if a square footage versus units would be a better way of producing more affordable units. I'm generally very supportive that we should look at that. My only comment would be to direct staff that if, while evaluating ways to maximize the number of inclusionary units, they come up with additional or alternative ways to increase the number of affordable units in a project, that they bring that back as well. Those are my comments. Thank you. Oh, no, I have one more comment. I just want to thank the city manager and staff for all their work last week and this weekend and tonight. This has got to be one of the most difficult things that a city has to go through, and so thank you for everything you've done.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I wanted to also thank Paul and Lauren and all the staff at City Hall. This has been an incredibly tough week, and I also want to thank my colleagues. I follow each of them on social media, and I know that social media has been very active on all our accounts with people weighing in. But we will all get through this, and I think tonight was evident what we can do. My only last comment I want to make this evening is on item 2W. I want to thank my colleagues in the city for our lease purchase agreement, taking over the log cabin and leasing the facility out to the West Hollywood Recovery Center. I think what's really important is that the monies that are collected at both the Recovery Center and the log cabin be reinvested in recovery services here in the city of West Hollywood. It looks like historically money has been sent to other causes outside of the city of West Hollywood, which doesn't really benefit our local residents or people who attend the meetings there. So knowing that we are going to move forward with a reinvestment of those $1 bills into addiction and recovery services within the city, I think is a really great and positive step. So thank you to everybody.
Mr. Mayor?
I have no comments, except to say thank you to everyone for including me remotely, as we agreed we might need to do going forward so that everyone can participate. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Get well. Since our last council meeting, I attended the LA City Council meeting where the LA City Council unanimously adopted a resolution to accelerate Crenshaw North and to collaborate with us at the staff level to keep things moving forward. So I want to thank our colleagues in the city of LA for working collaboratively with us on this much needed transportation solution. I attended the Clean Power Alliance board meeting and represented the city there, and I also represented the city at the National League of Cities convening, attended their board meeting, the legislative committee meeting, president's reception, and HD committee, where we featured West Hollywood's work, both on addiction and recovery with a speaker from SAMHSA, as well as our aging in place plan with a speaker from AARP. I had the ability to moderate the town hall with Dr. Allen on coronavirus. You may have seen him on any number of news programs, and both he and other leading experts on coronavirus were available to all of us as local elected officials to help guide us and be a resource for us at this time. I attended the WIMAGE board meeting, as well as meetings with Speaker Pelosi, CDC officials, Senators Harris and Feinstein, and Congressman Schiff, where we talked about housing needs, transportation, and infrastructure needs, among other local priority issues. I too want to thank our staff locally for all of your leadership. I know all of us are doing our best to get it done as best we can, and while these are not circumstances we're familiar with and quite frankly don't want to be familiar with, we know that everybody's working hard to respond as quickly and as effectively as we possibly can. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And finally, today I was in contact with representatives from Cedars, as well as Mayor Garcetti, Supervisor Kuehl, our Representative Bloom, our Assemblymember Bloom, and State Senator Ben Allen, and even Governor Gavin Newsom, about some of the items that we were talking about in our urgency items. Rest assured, everybody who represents us, these issues are top of mind for them, and they are listening to us directly. So we thank them for their leadership. Please stay safe. Please be in your homes. Please follow the guidelines. Practice social distancing, and we'll see you soon in person as soon as everybody's safe. Thank you.
And if I could, before we adjourn the meeting, just a little bit of housekeeping. So we will move forward with an agenda for April 6th. We will have Any action items will be related to the current emergency declaration. We'll likely have other consent calendar items on there as well. I want to just take a moment. Obviously, no one wants to go home right now more than I do, but I want to take a minute to say, first of all, the community's response to the pandemic has been phenomenal, and I want to thank the leadership of the mayor and all of the council members being supportive of me and the city hall staff, as a lot of the people in the organization have been really working tirelessly on this. But just kind of just something to think about. It's one thing to shut down an economy, and it's something else to restart it. We're going to have a really, really difficult time getting back online. And while we're getting ready to feel the pain, we haven't felt any of the pain yet. It's just starting now. As the Mayor Pro Tem said, right now we need to be patient. We need to be cooperative. We need to really be kind to each other, because it's going to get really bumpy as we move forward. So with that, thank you again for all your support. Thank you for the tools that you provided me and staff tonight. And we'll get to work first thing tomorrow morning. So thank you.
Madam City Clerk, the fiscal impact of our consent agenda.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure you remember that. The fiscal impact for tonight, with the removal of items 2I and 2U and the addition of items 4B, 5B, 5C, 5D, and 6A, which is the introducing on first reading an ordinance of the City of West Hollywood amending provisions of Chapter 3.08 of Title III of the West Hollywood Municipal Code relating to approval of contracts. And the fiscal impact is $3,105,982 in expenditures, $0 in potential revenue, and $0 in waived fees.
Okay, with that, we do have a motion and a second.
A motion by Councilmember Heilman, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Horvath. And for a voice vote, Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Heilman.
Aye.
Councilmember Meister.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath.
Aye.
And Mayor D'Amico.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, it is Women's History Month. And to end on a positive note, I wanted to congratulate Councilmember Lauren Meister, as well as Stephanie Harker, who is so well known to us here in West Hollywood, who were both honored with Women of the Year awards at our recent Russian Advisory Board International Women's Day event. So congratulations to you both and for your leadership.
I accept it for all women in West Hollywood.
Thank you very much. And if there's no objection, we will adjourn. Thank you.